neighbors and acknowledge the Green Initiative Committee and our Community Relations Committee to help put this together. We worked together to get the venue and the speakers and so forth. Phil's done a great job in getting that done. Reminder of your cell phones. And with that in mind, let's get Phil up here. Phil's going to come up and introduce the speakers, and we'll get this show on the road. I appreciate everybody coming. I'm Steve Beard, by the way. Some people may already know that.
Good afternoon, I'm Phil Leedick, and I'm a member of the Green Initiatives Committee. We came up with the idea of having one utility providers here because many of us may have forgotten that are long-time residents or new residents here that there are things we can do to reduce our energy consumption, save ourselves a little bit of money. And many of those things are no-cost or low-cost things. And there's a lot of resources out there, and that's why we invited the utility providers to make a presentation. So we have 3 people here. Paul Fisher is a public affairs specialist from Dominion Energy, South Carolina. Since his bio put this first, I'll put this first as well because he's proud of it. He's a native of Charleston. He lives on Daniel Island with his 2 children and wife of more than 20 years. Congratulations.
As of yesterday, that all was true, yes.
Paul's been with Dominion Energy for over 14 years. He started his career with South Carolina and Gas, which was actually electric and gas, which was the utility provider here. For those of you that haven't been here for more than a couple of years, you might not know that. Dominion took over that utility group. He's led a variety of customer-facing teams across the company's organization. And since 2017, he served as the public affairs specialist, handling community and media relations. He's a graduate of the College of Charleston, and with no further ado,
Absolutely. Thank you. Hi, good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for inviting me here to this beautiful facility, to this beautiful island we call home. Big fan of the Beaufort and Jasper area. My wife and I love it here as much as we love being in Charleston. We love coming down here to visit y'all just as much. I bring a few slides to go over some of the programs that Dominion Energy offers. I also brought a few slides just to give you a little bit of background about the company. Phil was kind enough to indulge that bio, which mentioned that we were South Carolina Electric and Gas for about 100 and something years prior to about 3 years ago when we became Dominion Energy South Carolina due to the merger with Dominion Energy, which is headquartered in Virginia. Dominion Energy South Carolina is headquartered still in South Carolina. Our headquarters are in the Columbia area, technically KC, which you might be familiar with. I am local to Charleston, and I work right here in the Low Country and in the Charleston area. My office is in North Charleston. So that's the background on that. I believe your island is completely underground service, correct? Which is a beautiful thing, and we can talk a little bit about that or answer any questions you might have with that. Certainly, underground is valuable to a coastal community in certain ways, and in other ways it brings other risks. So while you de-risk one area, like a wind event or a hurricane, which can topple outdoor infrastructure like your overhead infrastructure, those poles and those lines, you do end up taking on another risk like a water intrusion, floods, right? Significant flooding damage to underground infrastructure from something like a hurricane, or just something like a king tide, which we've had a lot of lately, right? And in Charleston, we've seen a lot of that around along the communities that are underground there as well. Yes?
So when you traveled past the Gardens Corner area this afternoon,
Yes.
that tremendous project, is that a substation equipment, all the new power lines that you saw?
Yes, they're,
What is that basic concept of your?
basically, we design our system for resiliency. And what you're seeing all along the Beaufort Jasper area, what you're seeing down through Charleston, all along the coastal community of South Carolina is investments in infrastructure that really are required to move what is essentially aging infrastructure, wooden poles, infrastructure that's been there for 50, 75 years or more, replacing that, what we call hardening the system with steel poles that have a greater wind resistance than those wooden poles. You know, you start to get up to a hurricane, 75-mile-an-hour winds, with those wooden poles, they'll snap. They're down, and we know what that means in terms of restoration. There's a lot of work involved in that. When you talk about those larger transmission poles and those steel poles, you got 150-mile-an-hour resistance built into those. That's the infrastructure we need along coastal South Carolina. That's what we're committed to doing. We're committed to modernizing that grid. You hear a lot of talk these days about the grid, right? You hear that on the news a lot. What's that? I don't know. You know, I've worked there for 15 years, but there's a lot of talk about the grid and how important it is that the grid is reliable. And the work we're doing in that infrastructure helps to ensure reliability and resiliency. And those are really two different things. Y'all talk about power outages. I'm sure we've had our shares living along the coast here as well as in Charleston. It's two things. Reliability is how often that power outage may occur. That's how we measure reliability. But resiliency is how quickly we can get your power back on when it comes out. Okay? And all of these investments in infrastructure help ensure that average duration of interruption continues to decline. I actually have a slide on that. We're actually doing pretty good on that. Yes, sir?
You mentioned something a minute ago that struck me. You talking about the infrastructure for power poles, but much of the power in here is underground.
Mm-hmm.
So when they come up out of the ground in these transformers, are you raising those transformers?
They're all what we call pad mounted. So yes, they are elevated, some more than others. So they don't physically. There is actually a vault underneath that. It can be either a switchgear or it can be a transformer, to your point. So one of those things that come along with, you get to remove the overhead infrastructure of the poles and wires. From an aesthetic standpoint, a lot of customers find that pleasing. They'd rather not see the overhead poles and wires, right? The trade-off for that is there is still some above ground infrastructure that's required. Switchgear cabinets, pad-mounted transformers. So there's a vault under there that helps to secure from water intrusion to some degree.
There are a number of transformers, especially one in my neighborhood, that the king tides flood.
Mm-hmm.
So sooner or later, they've got to come up just to get rid of the normal.
Well, you know, I could go do this presentation in the city of Charleston and they're going to tell me the same thing. They're going to say sooner or later the city's got to come up. Because clearly if you read the paper, it's sinking into the sea, right? They're building a seawall. They're trying to figure out how to stop flooding along the peninsula of Charleston. Very familiar with all of that. So that is exactly the kind of thing that through our continuous circuit inspection, routine maintenance that we're looking at, and we replace those transformers when we age. We do all we can to build resiliency around that in terms of pad mounting them. You know, are they going to be elevated? You know, then sometime down the road, long after Paul retires from public affairs, maybe, maybe. But that's part of the infrastructure challenge. I think that all municipalities along the coast are dealing with as we're looking at things like, you know, increased impacts from things like climate change and rising sea levels.
Impact to the houses, then you have to do something.
Right. Well, the meters themselves, which are, you know, the meters themselves, you know, the underground infrastructure is going to come up to the house and it's going to come up out of the ground, right? It's going to connect to your meter. The meters themselves are indeed typically elevated. And, you know,
Well,
right.
I'll talk to you after.
Yeah, we can talk afterwards. But we'll go through some of these very, very quickly. Just some very brief topics here. And if you have any questions, shout them out, or we can just do that at the end. I don't want to cut into our other guests' time because I can talk about this stuff for days. So yeah, we'll talk a little bit about Dominion Energy South Carolina. Our priorities are very, very simple. This is what we do every day: providing service, increasingly reliable, increasingly cleaner energy to the customers and the communities we serve across South Carolina. Safety is a #1 priority. It's built into everything we do. You talk about where that overhead or where that underground infrastructure is located, how those switch gears and pad-mounted transformers are located. Safety goes into everything we do. It's engineered into everything that happens with our organization and our employees every day. The second thing is what I was talking about earlier when I was vamping there for the slides, waiting for them to come back up. Reliability and resiliency. That's our goal when it comes to serving the customers all across South Carolina. We want to make sure that when you come home and you flip the switch, that the light comes on. We want to make sure that when it's cold, as we approach Thanksgiving week, and they're talking about even some possible frost warnings along the coast, that when you turn on that electric heat pump, that the power's there that you need to warm your home, to cook your Thanksgiving dinner for your families. We understand that the service we provide is really the lifeblood of everyone's home and business, and we want to make sure that it's there for you when you need it. So reliability, resiliency, and the last thing being customer service. I spent a good 10 years of my going on 15 years with the company in our customer service organization. Robert Smalls Parkway had a front-facing customer office. I don't know if anyone's familiar with that. If you've been in the area for a while, we could actually go in there and pay your bill, and you could sign up for service, or you could ask a question. I oversaw the folks in those offices across the state for quite a while as well. And they're very, very dedicated to what they do for our customers every day. Here's a really awful map that I don't know where it came from, of our service territory, Dominion Energy, South Carolina. It's really diagonally stretching from the coast of South Carolina back up to the western portion of the state. Everything in white there is likely due to energy service territory. You can see a couple of pockets are the electric co-ops. The rest of that is our natural gas and electric service territory. So we're serving approximately 780,000 electric customers across South Carolina, and more than 400,000 natural gas customers. So about 1.1 million customers for Dominion Energy South Carolina, and about 78,000 of which are in Beaufort, Hampton, and Richland counties. There's a little information here about the transmission of power and how that works. Probably don't need to go into too much detail for this, but the one thing that I'll stop on here is we're an underground community here where we stand in terms of the way our service is delivered. And we talk a lot to customers about aesthetics and preferences and some of the things we were talking about, but it also gets into things like trees and the iconography of the low country and how sometimes those trees can interfere with overhead power lines and that reliability and resiliency that we were talking about. And people say, well, Paul, I don't care about y'all trimming the trees, and you know, you don't do it in my neighborhood because I'm underground, so it doesn't matter to me that you do that work. The reality is it may be underground in your community, but it's overhead somewhere. Because the power is going to move from the point of generation, from our generation facilities all across the state of South Carolina. We have a pretty diverse mix of how we produce power for you. That's everything from natural gas to nuclear to solar to coal. And it's a pretty diverse mix. It's about a third, a third, and a third. We're continuing to move toward increasingly cleaner energy across our portfolio. There's only, I think, 1 or 2 coal plants remaining. And in the plan that we filed with the Public Service Commission, we'll see we'll be moving more and more away from coal and more toward increasingly cleaner sources of energy. But the point of this slide is it may be underground here, but it's overhead somewhere. So when the power goes out, you think, wow, how'd that happen? It's typically from a fault in line that's overhead, although it can be an underground issue as well. The reason we move from that to this is trees and tree limbs are the #1 reason you have a power outage. That's it. I know you're an underground community, but the #1 reason your power might flicker, your power might go out for a period of time during a storm, or for even, heaven forbid, a protracted period of time during a major weather event, it's going to be trees and tree limbs. That's it. I can't say it any simpler than that. Trees and tree limbs are the #1 reason that power goes out. The #1 threat to underground service for gas, and I know you're not a natural gas community, but it's a third-party digging, where a contractor or an excavator might accidentally dig into our underground infrastructure. So that's really the #1 threat for electric service. Issues in terms of reliability, trees and tree limbs. The problem with South Carolina, it's about a 300-day average growing season. We get about 60 days or so out of the year where the weather's kind of cool and the trees aren't growing and something's not blooming. And it seems to get increasingly more that growing season is almost year-round these days. So we actually trim on a 5-year cycle, and we can talk more about that later. Our vegetation management program is a proactive one. We are trimming trees along rights of way for our electric distribution and transmission lines somewhere every working day of the year. It does not stop. It may not be in your community or right along Sea Island Parkway every day of the year, but rest assured it is on a 5-year cycle, and we will spot trim accordingly should there be a reliability issue that happens in between those 5-year cycles. But typically it's a 5-year cycle that we come through and trim. So it's critical to resiliency, as we said. It allows for faster restoration, increases the safety for our employees and the safety of the general public. We do follow the standards for the health of the tree. So we've got about 12,000 or almost 13,000 overhead lines that need to be, 12,000 miles of overhead lines that need to be maintained on a 5-year cycle. And on the transmission side, it's about almost 4,000. And sometimes those cycles can be even a little shorter than the electric distribution cycle. Really, and the issue with trees and tree limbs and power outages, they are the #1 reason, but the really even paramount to that is safety. It's the safety of our employees, the safety of those crew members who pull out of that crew quarter on Robert Small Parkway in the dark night with the rain going sideways and go out there to get your power back on for you. We want to make sure that there's safety and clearance around those lines, and when a lineman reaches up in the dark at 2 a.m. to try to get the power back on, he knows exactly what he's grabbing. If he's moving vegetation away, that's an immediate safety issue for that employee. And that's just not a risk we're willing to take with our employees and also the general public. So that vegetation management program has helped us really over the last 10, 15, and even more years to bring down what is considered that system average index or duration of interruptions of service. The average now being about 90 minutes on an annual basis. That's an average. Some communities are going to see way less than that, some might see more. It really depends on the vegetation around them, to be perfectly honest. We're continuing to see that average duration of interruption of service decline, which is the right direction we want that to go from a reliability and resiliency standpoint. This is an interesting map. I want you to watch the lights pop up on it. This is Hurricane Matthew in 2016. You can see as the hurricane moves ashore, right along the shoreline, you can see the outages begin to occur. And then as time progresses, you can see the outages disappear as the crews restore that power. We had about I'm not approximating, about 250,000 customers impacted over Hurricane Matthew in 2016. I'm sure that was, if many of you lived here then, I'm sure you remember that event. But the power was restored, I think, primarily in about 7 to 10 days. There were some areas where it was restored in a day or two, and then there were some areas where it took multiple days, and I'm not sure exactly what the specifics are for any of you here who may have lived in the Beaufort area during Matthew, or how long you might have experienced. I'd love you to share that with me. Typically, what goes on is it's an access issue. The reason the power might take longer in some island communities, some Sea Island communities, it's typically access. It typically just simply takes us longer to get the power on there. And you know why typically? It's because trees block the road. And our crews and our trucks can't get through until the trees are removed. Sometimes we can do that. Sometimes we need a third-party contractor to do that. Sometimes the municipality or SCDOT might need to move those trees out of the way. But that's typically what slows down the process the most. Now granted, a hurricane, you talk about knocking the entire infrastructure flat to the ground. And it's not really a restoration issue. It really becomes a rebuilding issue after a hurricane, particularly a significant strike. Hugo brought the entire SCE&G system to the ground across South Carolina in one night, to the ground. There was no standing pole, there was no standing wire. To date, and I was in Charleston for Hurricane Hugo, didn't work for the company then, I was much to date, we have not had a significant strike from a hurricane to the level that we had from Hurricane Hugo in 1989. So we've been fortunate in that sense. But all the work we just talked about, from a reliability and resiliency standpoint, from building and hardening of infrastructure to routine circuits inspection and maintenance to vegetation management. That goes into preparing us for should that happen again. It's just the pictures of some of those access issues we talk about. If you've lived in coastal South Carolina long enough, you've seen that maybe just on an August afternoon. maybe just a bad August thunderstorm can bring down trees to the same level that we're picturing here. You see poles and transformers toppled. Pretty routine sight. Then you've got some access issues where sometimes both transmission and distribution lines might run over the water. They might run over marshland or swampy areas where an amphibious vehicle is required. And then, yes, we do have those. And a vehicle that can actually go from land to mud, to pluff mud, into the water and then back out again. A lot of it's access, and a lot of that just simply takes time. You can see some lean poles there. Parkway. Before we go into part two of it, any questions about that type of, anything in terms of storm that we talked about, and we can talk a little bit about safety if you want, but I've also got some information to share about energy efficiency. We talked about the Clean and Green initiative that brought us here today, so I'll share that, but I wanted to give you that background on the work we do and the service we provide you, and then get any feedback y'all might have as well. Yes?
After Hurricane Matthew, we were off for between 3 and 4 days, with one exception of one little strip on the north end of the island that took a few days longer to get back. So you asked that question.
Yeah,
for us, it was 3 to 4 days.
That's a good point of reference. I know down on Edisto, some of those folks were 7 to 10. And again, it was access. And what we found was simply that main drag, a lot of it was just simply covered in sand and trees. It was impassable after the storm. But a lot of it was access.
80 to 90% were back right up. Then there was another difficulty that kept another section down a little longer.
Very good. Very good. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I have a question about, you mentioned about the underground electrical service to our island being somewhat at risk due to water.
Sure.
Where's the water intrusion? Are you running direct aerial, or are you in conduit?
Yes, it's in common.
Okay, so we have conduit. So where's the risk of water intrusion if you...
It's mostly to the question we had earlier. It's mostly in that above ground infrastructure. So
it comes up into the vault underneath the transformer.
And it also can flood the actual pad mounted transformer itself or a switchgear cabinet
So
itself.
it's not the electrical wire per se.
Not per se. I'm not saying that could not happen. It can. There can be other damage. There can be third party damage to that underground conduit infrastructure. Things can happen over time, right? Just like with anything that's mechanical. But typically it is intrusion on that above ground.
Okay, so, okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Now, I was not at all familiar with the extent of your service as a natural gas supplier. Just something we're not familiar with in this area. But where do you transmit from? Where's your station that transfers into actual retail service? Where do you have your facilities?
The Transcontinental Pipeline is what provides natural gas service all along the East Coast. And we get our gas service from there. And then prior to the merger with Dominion Energy, we had an arm of the SCNG parent company, SCANA. It was Carolina Gas Transmission. And those gas transmission lines were the underground infrastructure that brought gas from the coast and a little bit further inland. Now, I understand that this isn't a natural gas community, but we do have natural gas in parts of, I think in parts of the city of Beaufort, as well as some other areas nearby. A lot of times people say, well, how do I get natural gas? And typically what happens is the natural gas lines grow to follow the growth and development of an area. I don't know the specifics in terms of how close you are to what would be a main that would bring gas to Daw. I don't know the specifics. I can follow up on that for you. But we are indeed the licensed provider for, regulated providers.
Yeah, by your restaurant.
Yeah, right. It's propane too, and there's benefits to both. Natural gas is cheaper. Propane prices can be a little volatile. The typical question is, last year my bill was this on an average, this year it's that. Last month it was X and now it's Y. My neighbor's bill is A and mine is B. And here's the answer to all of that. You can't compare any of those apples to any of those oranges. Really, it all is about the consumption in your individual residence or business. And we've got some tips that really kind of start and end around energy efficiency. And really, I say this to folks all the time, the thermostat is where it's at. That's it. That's the heart of your building. It's the heart of all the energy consumption in your home. It's really all about the thermostat. Your heating and cooling system typically amounts for anywhere, on a minimum, around 50% of your annual costs for energy for your home. We know this is an all-electric community. Many of you might be working with an electric heat pump. Anybody familiar with that term? You might have heat pumps in your home. They're great when it's not cold. They're wonderful and they're highly efficient when it's not chilly out. I mean, they're wonderful for warm weather climate, but every one of those 60 days that we might run into out of a year where it gets cold along the coast of South Carolina, they're really not that efficient. And they're going to work really, really hard to bring the temperature of your house up if it's on an average 40 degrees outside across a 12-hour period. And if you've got your thermostat set at, let's say, I don't know, 72, you're probably never going to get there, and you're going to consume an incredible amount of energy trying to with the heat pump. So one of the things we talk about is, for winter weather which is coming up, my recommendation to everyone is set your thermostat at 68 degrees. And I got it right from the back. I did not get an amen, I got an oh boy. 68 degrees, that's too cold, right? Same thing my wife says. Same exact thing my wife says. We recommend 68, but just as a point of reference. If you set it at, say, 72 instead of 68, you can pay anywhere from 25 to 30% more now. 25 to 30%. From 68 to 72. Every degree you raise that thermostat up, you might see a difference of 6 to 10% when you so in the summer we recommend 78. People say too hot. Right? That's my corner. I'm going to talk to y'all later. I love that. People say too hot. 68, people say too cold. Now granted, it is what you're comfortable with. It's certainly what you're comfortable with. But what we recommend is a gradual, like, how many folks even are anywhere near 68 in the winter here? That's pretty good. We got, I'd say, a third of the room. That's great. And some people are like, not really, I don't know. Yeah, 70. So at 70, you're probably paying 13 to 50% more than if you were setting it at 68. I got this great chart. I want y'all all to take one of these home. I'll put them up on the table. It gives you an idea. And it's summertime as well, in terms of where you want to keep that thermostat. We recommend folks gradually make this change. If you're a 72 or a 74 in the winter, we recommend you take it down 1 degree maybe every couple of days and sort of acclimate yourself. Get out my kids are like, it's freezing. They're getting out their fuzzy slippers and their sweatshirts and they're getting out hats and beanies and you know, they're walking around like they can see their breath. Not quite that, but you know, we are all, it's always what you're accustomed to. So we recommend gradually making that change. Really, the thermostat, as I said, is going to be at a minimum 50%, in some cases 70% of some homeowners' bills. And the reason for that is the efficiency of those units. How many folks have had a unit, a heating and air conditioning unit or heat pump replaced in the last 15 years?
Twice.
Right? Mine is 21 years old. And I dare not tell you
not running
what its seasonal energy efficiency ratio is. That's a SEER rating. It's not great. I know that, and we're looking to replace it because we're going to see a significant savings from that. And we'll talk about some of these programs in detail, but it's really about the efficiency of the unit and also about what you can do around the home that's low and no cost. Now, replacing a unit that has a low SEER is no easy feat. And they're expensive, right? You're talking thousands of dollars to make this upgrade or improvement to your home. There's some other things you can do, though, to keep that heat in during the winter or to keep that heat out during the summer. And we'll talk about a couple of those basic things. So we talked about lowering it to 68. Keeping those air ducts, whether you have them in the floor, on baseboards, or whether you have them in the ceiling, making sure they're not obstructed in any way. Sealing off leaks, and that means crevices around doors and, you know, weather stripping. It's simple. It's a trip to the Lowe's. It's a trip to the Ace Hardware. It's a few dollars for a few rolls of this stuff. Going into the attic, cracks, seals, and crevices, you can get a can of foam spray to close up some of those things. It's really about what you can do for, you know, a Saturday trip to the hardware store. It's sealing cracks and crevices around windows and doors, a tube of caulk, a roll of weather stripping. You can do miracles. If you see these things around your home, around your windows, take that opportunity on a sunny Saturday to fill in those gaps. You'll see benefits from things like that. Ductwork, of course, you want to inspect that every now and again. A lot of folks don't pay a lot of attention to it. We've had folks saying, well, my bill's tripled all of a sudden. We haven't done anything different. You go into their home and a large piece of ductwork is just funneling that heat into the dirt, right? Or in the attic where it's falling apart and it's not getting into the rooms of the home, it's just circulating around the attic. Things like that you got to be aware of, because those things can go sideways for you without knowing it. The water heater, people ask me about it all the time. Keep your water heater at about 120. That's really what we recommend from an efficiency standpoint. It's plenty hot. Most out of the box are set higher than that. So you might, if you've got a new one recently, dial that down. Some folks have the on-demand water heaters. Those are great. The ones that are tankless, right? That only engage the energy consumption when you're running the water versus keeping that tank hot, 24/7. Keep that around 120. Make sure those filters and those furnaces and those heat pumps in and around our homes are changed every month. We usually say, get the cheapest ones you can find, the ones that are like 99 cents, those brown ones, have any writing on them. You don't know which way they're supposed to go into the furnace all day. Those are the ones to get. The ones that are $15, $20, $18, $25 more, that filter out this and HEPA that, they're great if you have allergies, but from an airflow perspective, any restriction around these, that's why we asked you to clean them, so you can get that dust and debris out of here. Any restriction to the airflow is going to cause the unit to work harder, which is going to cause it to consume more energy, and it's going to increase your bill. So those really inexpensive furnace filters, replace them when the bill comes every month or when you pay that bill every month. That's really the easiest way to sort of get on the time schedule with that. The other ones are great, but they are going to restrict air a little bit more because they're restricting other pollutants in the home, and we understand that. But they may make the unit work a little bit harder. What should we do when we talk about?
Well, can I ask one question?
Yes.
The first item you put up there was thermostat. Have you noticed, as people start to use these automated thermostats, that it helps, that it encourages people to do the right thing?
While it's not a loaded, no-cost option, a smart thermostat is a great investment. Because there's a lot of things you can do with that. You know, you can, if you're out of the home during the workday or during the school day, or the majority of your family is out of the home, you can bring it down to 68 throughout the day, and then gradually increase that thermostat to 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon to come back to that 72, or whatever you feel a little more comfortable with. But it's going to allow you to conserve energy when you're not at home, when no one's there to benefit from that heat or from that air conditioning in the home. The smart thermostat, you can do it from your phone. You've seen the Nest is a very popular brand. We're not endorsing any, or we don't sell them. But I can tell you that there are many, many brands on the market. You can go to Lowe's and probably see 3 or 4 of them now. Those smart thermostats are really a good investment. You want to make sure that if you do get that, make sure you have it calibrated. Make sure you have that thermostat calibrated by a licensed technician. We have many, many instances where folks install them themselves. Their bill goes through the roof. They don't understand it. They want to know what happened. Why is my energy consumption doubled, or why has it tripled in the last 2 months? A lot of times the thermostat's not properly calibrated, or a lot of times with the heat pump, you'll find those emergency or auxiliary heat strips are running, and they can be running concurrently with the air conditioning in the summer, and you'll never feel a thing until you get your bill. They can be running in the winter when you very quickly in the morning, when it's 38 degrees outside along the coast of South Carolina, bump that thermostat up like 4 or 5 degrees at once. Well, a heat pump can't handle 4 or 5 degrees at once. It takes about 1 degree every 30 minutes to an hour to get that ambient temperature moving through, right? When you move it up that high, the auxiliary heat is going to come on, and that's going to triple the energy consumption of the heat pump when those, and you'll see a little light on the thermostat. Many of you might be familiar with it. It might say aux. There might be a little flame icon on the thermostat. That's when, and that's the first and only time at a heat pump you can go like this, and oh, it actually feels warm. That's when your heat strips are on. Because the heat pump doesn't, the heat pump air feels cool to the touch as it's moving through your home on a winter morning. And a lot of people don't like that, particularly folks who migrate to the coast of South Carolina from places up north where they're used to gas heat. You ever had gas heat in your home? Gas heat's great, right? You tell, whoa, it's on, I feel it. It's immediate, right? It's like the heater in your car and on your floorboards. It's almost too much. Gas heat's great. Heat pumps don't provide. Those are good questions. Here's a few of the residential energy efficiency programs that we offer. One of them that I recommend for everyone in here, it's completely no cost to you. It's a home energy checkup. We'll send a technician out to your home, and they will walk through. You're going to give them a couple hours, because he's going to walk through with you, and he's going to inspect your heating and air conditioning unit. He's going to look at your furnace filters. He's going to go look at your ductwork, whether that's above in the attic or whether it's below. He's going to look at crawl spaces. He's going to look at attic efficiency of insulation. He's going to even look at your water heater. He's going to look at the pipes that are in and around it. He's going to look for opportunities to find ways that you can, at low or no cost, reduce your energy consumption. It's completely free. He gives you a full detailed report when he's done. We did move to virtual home energy checkups through the pandemic, as you can imagine. As we've moved a little bit beyond that, we have started with in-person home energy checkups again, as long as the customer's comfortable with it. They can be masked and all of those good things. But it often does require a little bit of a detailed visit in and around the home. They're going to find those seals. They're going to find those cracks and crevices. They're going to come in with a meter. They're going to point it up to your vent, and they're going to tell you exactly what the temp is and how efficient your heater is working. They're going to point it over the window. They can tell you exactly what percentage of the heat's escaping, either through your glass, single pane, double pane, through cracks and crevices in and around those windows, through your door, around your doors. It's a very, very detailed process. It's well worth it. I highly recommend it. They'll often leave you behind some free LED bulbs, an aerator for your water to save for your kitchen closet to save on hot water. Lots of wonderful goodies there, and a lot of great information on how to reduce your energy consumption in your home. Well worth it. Has anyone done this here in the room? Anyone done a free home energy checkup? Anyone interested in it? Can I come do it at anyone's house after I finish here? It's totally fantastic. I really recommend everyone in the room here to take advantage of that. The other thing I'll talk briefly about is our appliance recycling program. So, who here has a spare refrigerator somewhere? Maybe in the garage. Maybe it just holds beverages. Maybe it's great on Thanksgiving when you need to defrost the turkey. It could be that. Could be wine out there. We don't know. Maybe that refrigerator is 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old. Maybe it was the one you had before you upgraded the kitchen and you just moved it out to the garage. In our case, it was one we had when we first got married. We were married 29 years, so about 2 summers ago, we ended up turning that refrigerator in, and Dominion Energy offers a refrigerator recycling program. We'll come to your house. We'll make sure that the refrigerator is in functioning order. We will then haul it away, and no cost to you. It will be completely recycled in an environmentally safe way. 98, 99% of all the parts are recycled in an environmentally safe way. We're not talking about landfills here and dumps. The refrigerators are dismantled and recycled completely. There's no cost to you for that. And we give you a $50 check just for letting us come out and take your refrigerator away. Why, you might say? Why would we do that? The incentive is it has to be a working unit. And if it's a working unit, every working unit that is of lesser than modern efficiency, not Energy Star rated, let's call it that. Anyone that we can remove from the grid, better for the planet, causes less energy consumption really all around us. We have to produce less, and it's better for your carbon footprint. We're all about taking those old units off the grid. A lot of times they can be twice as much in terms of energy consumption than a new Energy Star rated refrigerator you might go buy at a home improvement warehouse or Lowe's or somewhere like that. So you're talking maybe $250 to run one of those, and maybe $100, $110 to run a new Energy Star related refrigerator on an annual basis. Not to mention the benefits to the environment. So if you're looking to get rid of one, you don't want to haul it off, you don't want to put it in a dump, you also want to get $50 free and clear from Dominion Energy, go on the website and click on that to schedule an appointment to get that refrigerator removed from your house. As long as it's functioning, we'll take it away. There are also heating and cooling rebates to the point of all the things we were talking about earlier with the thermostat, with ductwork, with that it can be 50% of your annual energy use in the home. Upgrading to a higher efficiency SEER rating. You can get as much as $500 in rebates from Dominion Energy to do that. It's the same logic behind getting that old refrigerator off the grid. Getting these old units out of service and off the grid. It's better for all of us. Less energy that needs to be produced. It's better for the environment, reduces our carbon footprint. All of those things are great. So those rebates do exist. Also, duct replacement or duct work, aging duct work in the home, rebates exist for that as well in your attic or underneath. It can be anywhere from $300 to $700 in total, just depending on what you're doing, what those improvements are. Typical rebate for a 15 SEER unit, I think, is around $500. So 15 SEER is the minimum, by the way. I know you and I talk about SEERs on the phone. That's the minimum that you'd be able to replace and qualify for. There's certainly higher SEERs you can go to, but the cost of those units are going to move exponentially up. We also have an online store for things like LED bulbs. We talked about smart thermostats. There probably are some available there on our online store as well. Smart power strips. Every single electronic unit that my kids have in the house never stop consuming energy. So they may be off, but they never stop consuming energy. You used to hear the term that they were energy vampires. These are the things that just slowly stop. Your TV's off, but there's a tiny red light that's always on, right? You're like, what is that? What's happening? Who's watching? What is that? It's always running. There's always some form of power coming to most modern electronics, whether that's a computer, whether it's a laptop. Certainly we're always charging devices across our home. Smart, what you would call a smart surge protector, a power strip. Those will allow us to minimize the amount of energy that those things are consuming. Not while they're in charging mode, but while they're in what's considered standby mode. So those are also available there as well. So that is incredibly helpful information on our website in terms of those programs that are available to all of us. There might have been a couple of other things in the PowerPoint, Phil, that you'd asked me to touch on. One of the things I want to touch on is our budget billing program. Has anyone signed up for that? Ever heard of it? Does anyone know what that is? Perfect. My 72's in the back. 72 thermostat budget billing. That's the way to go, really. That's exactly what we're doing in my house. Budget billing allows you to pay one set amount across a 12-month period, and that's going to be based on your prior 12-month usage. We'll simply take it and divide it by 12. That's assuming that you're not going to make any major changes to the way you consume energy in the home. You're ultimately only at the end of the year, what we call the anniversary or the true-up period, you're only going to pay for what you use. So if you overpaid a rebate, maybe you used even less this year than last year, and you were paying $150 each month, and then you realize at the end there's a credit there for you, then maybe it's not $150. Right. Maybe it's something else. It could be $70. Some folks it could be $300 to $500. It really just depends on all the things we talk about every day. Budget billing is an eye to pay one thing. It's a great budgeting tool. Is really what it is. That's why we call it that. It's a great way to know my Dominion Energy South Carolina bill is always $80. It's always $100, whatever it is. And at the end of the year, you'll get a full accounting of each month and your total usage. And if there is a credit due there, great, but also there could be a balance due there at the end of the year too. So you kind of watch it as the year goes on. We'll look at it 3 times during the year for you, and if we see a spike going high up or going down, we'll adjust that number, that monthly payment for you. So we keep an eye on it with you as well. It's a great program. The budget billing, I recommend it completely. Been doing it for a lot of years at my home as well. The other thing I want to talk about, and then we can just do some extra, a couple of questions, is scams. Let me just talk to you all very, very briefly about utility scams. I don't know how many folks in the room here, maybe we've got, what, a couple of dozen, 25, 30 people. I'd love to know, have you ever received a call from someone claiming to be Dominion Energy, threatening to cut your power off immediately if you don't make an immediate payment with either a prepaid gift card, a Green Dot card, a prepaid Visa card, a Target card, cryptocurrency? That's not us. First and foremost, that's a scam. We never demand immediate payment over the phone. We'll never call you to threaten immediate disconnection. Our goal is to keep your power on. I spent 10 minutes talking about that when I first came here today. Our goal is not to turn power on. If people are having trouble with their bills, or if they're struggling, whether it's COVID or other issues in their home financially, we're going to figure out a plan to keep their power on. We'll figure out a payment plan. We'll do whatever we need to do to keep your power on. We're not going to call you to threaten disconnection. We're not going to demand you pay in some non-traditional way. A major utility that has 7 million customers across 16 states. We don't need you to go to Circle K to get a Green Dot Visa card and then call us back with the number. That is a scam. It does increase during the holidays. We see it every year. I don't know what market you mostly get your news from, if it's the Charleston market, channels 2, 4, and 5, or whether it's Savannah, WSAV, or TOC and those guys, channel 11. We work with them every year to make sure customers are aware. These scams increase every year during the holidays. They're waiting for you to be your most vulnerable when you're busy, when you're hosting a gathering, when you're sitting down for Thanksgiving dinner. That's when they'll call. That's when they'll say they're going to cut the power off in 20 minutes if you don't pay immediately. Folks fall for it, and I'm not saying, all we want to do is increase awareness around this. I actually have a handout here on scams. I'd love for y'all to take that with you as well. And that's really about it in terms of what the slides were. The other thing I'll mention is just download the Dominion Energy app. If you do have a smart device, it's the quickest way to pay your bill. It's the quickest way to report a power outage should one of those occur. It's the quickest way to verify information about your account, when the due dates are and what the balances are. Should you get a scam call, you can do that in about 2 clicks with biometric identification of either your face or your fingerprint. The app is free for Android devices in the Play Store or in the Apple Store for Apple devices. It's just one step beyond an online account. You can have it all on your mobile device. We can send you notifications when your bill comes out. We can send you notifications about your budget billing should change or spike. But the app is really an amazing tool. We've got about 200,000 customers already in South Carolina who've downloaded it just since last year. Customers seem to love it. I'm just recommending the app is a great way to stay connected with us. So Phil or anybody else have any other questions I'm happy to take?
There were 2 other things I wanted you to cover very briefly. I told people we
Sure.
don't go into too much depth, but just the status of solar
Sure.
related to Dominion,
Right.
including the community solar
Sure.
program, which I didn't know anything about.
Right.
And then, is there anything you recommend people do in terms of preparing their homes in advance
Sure.
when the storm does strike?
Yeah.
Protecting their
Well, let's talk very quickly about solar power. Anyone here have rooftop solar? Enjoying it?
$9 bill a month.
There you go. We have about 1,000 megawatts of solar on our system in South Carolina alone. I'm not talking about the rest of Dominion Energy's footprint. I'm talking about just South Carolina. We already generate about 1,000 megawatts of our energy from solar. On a sunny day, not like it was when I'm driving here, but maybe a little bit like it is now. On a sunny day, approximately 40% of the energy you're consuming is generated by solar power. Now, most of that is utility scale solar. It's the solar farms, as they call it, right? It's not necessarily coming from rooftop generation, which primarily, mostly is going to benefit that homeowner and what's going on at that meter. He's talking about a $9 net bill there at the end of the month, which is great. The only thing we want to make sure when folks do talk to us about should I put a solar installation or an array on my roof, is make sure you do your homework. That's all we say. Make sure you do your homework. Make sure you research the installers. Make sure you get multiple bids. Really think through the option of leasing or buying and what might be more beneficial for you for that rooftop array. But the other thing is make sure that the system is sized appropriately for your home and the consumption in your home, but also that your home is directionally at a place barring trees, barring shade, and it can truly benefit from the sun's energy. A lot of times the installers, they may not always give the most detail around some of that fine print. That can definitely impact your rate of return on a rooftop array. The direction the house is and what it faces, whether or not your HOA even allows rooftop solar, many do not. Most of it has to be facing the back, or if it is facing the back, is that still collecting the sun? There's a lot that goes into that. So we just recommend you do your homework. We have a great place on our website to go for more information about solar. In terms of community solar, we did have a community solar program, which is really the benefits of that green power and supporting cleaner energy in and around the communities we serve without actually investing in a rooftop array. And what it was simply investing in a solar panel or panels in a utility scale farm and then getting the credits back from the energy that those provide. That program, unfortunately, is fully subscribed. It has been almost since it was rolled out. There is a waiting list for that program that you can find some information about it on our website. But right now, there are no plans to expand the community solar program beyond the breadth of it now. So there is indeed a waiting list. So as folks move away, move out of our service territory and new folks move in, opportunities do come up. And I know you said you're talking to our representatives about that, Phil. So the community solar program does exist here in South Carolina. The problem is it is fully subscribed. The only other option for personal solar would be something like a rooftop array, and we talked about some of that. But the bulk of that 1,000 megawatts I'm talking about, and that 40% of the power that's coming to you on a sunny day from clean grain solar, that's going to be utility scale. And we've got quite a number of those facilities really across the state of South Carolina. There's our Trask solar farm, which is about 10 megawatts, and I think that is right here in Beaufort County. We've got in Hampton County, the Yemassee, and then we have a facility also, I think near Ridgeland as well, that I believe is about 71 megawatts. So that's all just right here. That's just right here in your, let's call it Tri-County area. And we've got those facilities really all across South Carolina. We love solar. We wish every single kilowatt hour could be generated by the sun. The problem is, you guys want to turn your lights on at night, and we just don't know what to do about that, except provide you with an alternative source of power, because the deal with that utility scale solar is, it's great when the sun's shining and it's going out to the grid where folks can consume it, but battery storage on a really large scale level, storing that power is not at a place where it's really cost effective yet, certainly not at the utility scale level, and likely not even at the homeowner's residential solar array level. So the sun's not always shining, but folks are always consuming power. So we have to be able to provide that power to you from a number of resources, not just solar. We wish it could all be solar. We're just not quite there yet in terms of technology, but it is moving forward. And the other thing was hurricane safety, and we can just give up there, my friend. I've given up on the slides. But the hurricane safety, it doesn't really have to be hurricane season. I know we're at the tail end of it now. All of this is universal information in terms of how do we prepare, right, when a major storm is coming. A major storm can come across the coast of South Carolina, like I said, any day in August. We could get one between now and Christmas time. I think it was just a Christmas or two ago, we had it was last Christmas Eve. High winds across the coast of South Carolina. You get that budding up of high and low pressure. You get high winds. What happens with high winds? Trees and tree limbs move. Remember, trees are only stationary at their base. And a lot of that infrastructure is up in the air with those limbs. It's even those trees that are outside of our right-of-way that are tall enough they can fall on top of damage that infrastructure. So those things do happen. So power outages can happen. In terms of how do you prepare, really it's all about just making sure that you and your family are safe. The number one way to do that is have an emergency kit on hand. We've all heard these tips before, but this is 100% universal. Have an emergency kit on hand that includes things like your flashlights, fresh batteries, battery-powered radios. Anybody still have those anymore? I do. My kids make fun of me. They don't even know what it is. Battery-powered radio. Have you seen those ones that you can crank up to? Those are great. I got one of those. I've only had 2 power outages in 21 years in the neighborhood I live in, talking about underground and reliability and resiliency. So I'm pretty blessed in that. But again, we haven't had a major hurricane. So it's about having that emergency kit. It's about having water, prescriptions, making sure that, for folks who have elder care, child care, pet care, making sure that you have an evacuation plan, making sure that you know your route. We work very closely with SC, EMD, and the State Emergency Management Group to make sure that folks are aware. Know your evacuation route. How do you get off of this island? Looks like there's only one way. Well, you can take a boat, right, and head out to the storm. Or you can take the parkway, right, and get out that way. But making sure even beyond Dogtown and beyond Beaufort and Beaufort County, making sure you know your evacuation route and your best way to safety. Those things are universal. It's not a natural gas community, so you don't have to worry about that. Sometimes folks ask us, what do I do about natural gas in a hurricane? Typically nothing. That underground infrastructure is almost never impacted. Only if it would be a significant flooding event that might damage appliances inside a home. But that's very, very rare. It has been, at least in the last 25 years or so. Yes, ma'am?
Do you recommend generators for home?
Sure. I think, again, you're going to want to weigh the cost of that investment and the value of that reward. How often will you need it? Is it a portable generator that you haul outside, crank it up like a lawnmower, and then you can run one or two appliances on it? Or is it a full home Generac, fully connected into the breaker box of your home and powers everything from your heating and air to your kids' Apple smart devices? There's certainly a variety of options available to consumers in terms of generators. Our number one point about generators is certainly it's up to the individual homeowner, but it's make sure to use it safely. The number one thing that we see following a major storm, and it's almost inevitable, someone will suffer and fall victim to carbon monoxide poisoning due to improperly using a generator in a non-ventilated area. Make sure that you're following all manufacturer's instructions, you're operating it outdoors, and make sure that you're connecting it properly just to those appliances. Sometimes those portable generators, folks will try to hook that back up to their breaker box, and you might get something called a backfeed on the line. It could actually endanger our employees if you're not following the manufacturer's instructions for how to connect that generator properly to the appliances it can serve. So that's a really, really good question. Yes, ma'am. Anything else on power?
There's been interest in whole house surge protectors. And I just was wondering if you had any views about that.
Well, it's not something that we provide, and I don't think that's something you'd find in our EnergyWise store. The question that I would ask the homeowner, and I used to work in our front-facing offices, is how often are you getting surges, first and foremost? Let's look at your history of power outages at your home, and we can pull that up and look at it together. How often is that happening? How often are you seeing surges? Because what we're going to want to do is, at a broader level, identify on our system what might be causing those surges, because we're going to want to fix them. Before you go out and invest in some large consumer fix for that, let's come to the source. Let's have a conversation with somebody at Dominion Energy that we can look at maybe why that's happening. Is it just your home, or is it your neighbor's home too? Is it everyone on your block? Because if there is something that's creating faults on this line or creating surges, intermittent voltage levels, we're going to want to know that because we're going to want to help fix that. That might be the quicker source, might be the lower to no cost answer to that question. It's to come to us first before we invest in something like a third-party solution.
What about electrical storms? We have lightning that causes this surge. So that happens on this island quite often. So it does happen a couple times a year. I did put one of those in my electrical panel. They're small and they fit right inside the electrical panel. You just have to have a separate breaker for it. And those all-in-one surge protectors for the entire house are really good, especially with all the electronics, appliances that we have today, washers, everything that's Wi-Fi, adapted and so forth, and blowing up all these panels and circuit boards, things like that.
So, unfortunately, that's the one generation source we don't control is Mother Nature's generation of electricity in terms of lightning strikes. We understand the randomness of that, and it can damage our infrastructure. We do have safety and precautions in place on the grid in terms of lightning arresters and all of the things that we would need to stop that surge at its point of entry onto the grid before it can damage your home, before it can move in to damage your new flat panel TV or your new stovetop or whatever that appliance might be that could be susceptible to that surge. So we take the precautions we can take on our system. Certainly any precaution you might take at the home at the breaker box level is probably a great insurance policy, but I honestly don't know really enough about the different options to give you any endorsement one way or the other.
They're relatively expensive.
Right. Yes. Oh, not a question, just a yawn, which I get a lot of those too. I really appreciate all the attention and questions and time. I appreciate the invite to come out. I don't want to take up any more of the group's time, but thank you all so much for having me.
Okay, our next presenters are from Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer. Brian Chemsack is the Chief of Plant Operations. He's a resident of Beaufort. He's been with Beaufort Jasper Water Sewer for how many years? 14 years. His roles have included project development review, capital project planning and execution, oversight of the engineering department, and now as the Chief of Plant Operations. He's a graduate from the University of South Carolina with a degree in civil engineering. And we'll see if he knows about computer technology.
Well, I'll go ahead and start.
Should we introduce Sherman as well? Brian's colleague is Kevin Sexton. He's the water operations manager. He's pretty much worked his way up through the system, starting as a meter reader.
Yes.
And in 1990, and in the last 21 years, if I calculate that correctly, he transferred initially to Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer from the city. He changed roles and became a water operations trainee and was subsequently promoted to supervisor. And after much experience and many accumulated licenses, in 2015 he became the water operations manager. Congratulations.
All right, so to start off, I was going to tell you guys a little bit about Beaufort Jasper as an organization. I'm sure you know we're the water and sewer provider out here on Balta Island. But what you may not know is that we were started back in 1960s to provide water to the military bases in Beaufort. They had some wells that were going dry, and that's where the Beaufort County Water Authority was started, was to take those wells offline to treating surface water from the Savannah River. So a large construction project was started to build an 18-mile canal from the Savannah River all the way to our plant. You've probably driven by it, you may not have noticed it, but it's at the corner of Snake Road and 170. So as you're heading to Bluffton, as you come over the Chessie River and that first stoplight, that's where our main office is located, but behind that building is the original plant. It's still in service. And from that point, we have, like I said, a canal that goes all the way back to the Savannah River. That plant is rated for about 24 million gallons a day. Since its original construction, this area has grown. We've had the need for additional water capacity, so we constructed another plant, our Currysburg plant. It's rated for 15 million gallons a day. It's actually located almost directly on the river. It's across the street from our intake pump station, so it doesn't rely on the canal for its water supply. However, it is directly adjacent to it. So between those two plants, we have 39 million gallons of capacity every day that we can serve the two-county area with. Over the years, as the water service expanded, Beaufort Jasper acquired smaller systems in the area, started building sewer systems with the Clean Water Act. So currently now we're the service provider for all municipalities within that area, except for Richland. They're separate, and Hilton Head, we wholesale water to them. But areas like Bluffton, Beaufort, Port Royal, and Hardyville, and all the unincorporated areas of both Beaufort and Jasper County are served by us. We're run by an 11-member board. There's a board member appointed from each of those areas I just talked about, plus Hilton Head, one from Ridgeland, and the rest are kind of unincorporated Beaufort and Jasper County. So they represent not only you all as customers, but the rest of our customer base. So they give us direction and help us through all these challenging times. I know one of the things I had on here was your per capita usage. That was a question that came up, is how much water are people using? What's driving that water usage? So the main thing there, over the years, there's been lots of, okay, do you think the other computer will work by chance?
Try again.
Okay. But over the years, starting in, I think, 1994, I don't remember the name of the act, but an act was put in legislation that reduced the amount of water that your sink faucets and toilets would use per flush or per minute. I don't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I believe it reduced their capacity by about half. So whereas the older style toilet may have been 2.8 gallons per flush, I think now it's around 1.5 is the maximum. However, you'll notice there's Energy Star, WaterSense labels on the toilets. Those take it down to an even lower level. I think it's about 1.2 gallons per flush. So if you live in a newer home or even have upgraded some of those fixtures since the 90s, you're already conserving water without really changing anything in your daily routine. We talk a lot at schools to kids about turning the water off when they brush their teeth, taking shorter showers, not letting the water run as they're washing their hands and things like that. And that's a really good skill to teach them. However, in the big picture, that's not where you will see any water savings in your house. With those low flow features, like I said, it's under a gallon you may be saving by doing those. But just recently in 2010, I believe, another act was passed that pushed forward lower capacity for washing machines and dishwashers. So again, if you've upgraded those in the last 10 years, you're already saving water. And again, they also have a WaterSense label on them that is below even the maximum standard. So I think the biggest reduction there was in washing machines. They went from, I think, almost 40 gallons per cycle down into the 20s. And that's for a standard size washing machine. So that's really a pretty large savings. Right there at the top presentation. So again, if you've got those in your home, you're saving water on what we call indoor usage. Keep in mind as you're running your dishwashers and washing machines, if you use the extra cycle feature or perhaps the soak feature, that may induce more water usage than what it says is per load, because obviously it's filling up the bin, draining it before it goes into its normal cycle. So really where we can save water as homeowners is on our irrigation. That's where we see, yes, perfect. I'll just catch up here, make sure I didn't miss anything. Over there, okay, perfect. All right. This is Dot Talk from 1980. Oh yeah, so if you were curious, I know we heard from Dominion how many customers they serve. We're not quite there, but this 60,000 number is from our last year's annual financial report. We haven't published the new number yet. We're going through our audit now, but it's right around 65,000. So in the last year, we've picked up about 5,000 water customers. And on the sewer side, you can see it's lower, by about 20,000. There's still lots of areas. You'd be surprised, Ladies Island, Port Royal, areas that you're probably very familiar with, don't have sanitary sewer service. They are still on septic tanks. So that's a big project we work with local municipalities on, trying to identify those areas, go out and get grants, because after homes are built, roads are in place, it's very expensive to bring sewer into a neighborhood. So here's what I was going to show you. As you can see, since 2005, this is actually your per capita demand. So this is our system, the water we put out every year, how our customer base is growing. And as you can see, there's really no pattern to it. You'd think after I told you in 2010 that we got new washers and dishwashers that we'd see this kind of decline, but really what drives this more than anything is the weather. These peaks you see are drought years, the dips you see are winter years, and I actually think that big spike there might be from Hurricane Matthew. We saw a lot of folks after a storm doing a lot of irrigation as they were repairing their yards.
So Brian, that's a combination of house water and leach.
That's correct, yep. So this is, what we did here is filtered out any commercial customers and wholesale customers and just limited it to residential. So this is indoor and outdoor use. Here's some of the things we talked about. So here's actually some of the numbers. You can see toilets. Oh, I was wrong. They were actually 3.5 gallons per flush, now down to 1.3. Shower faucets, not quite as much of a reduction, but still some reduction, especially if you have one of the Energy Star ones. And then dishwashers from 14 gallons per cycle down to around 6, and the biggest one being those washing machines from 41 gallons per load down to potentially maybe 22 to get it down to those energy efficient models. So this is our water usage to date for the year. This is out of all of our facilities that goes into our system. As you can see, in January through about March or April, it's not too much of a demand. We're probably averaging about 17 million gallons a day. That's when we like to do a lot of our maintenance and projects within the plants where we have to take them offline. But then starting about April into May, you see a pretty big increase. That's as folks are starting to irrigate their yard, they've planted things. And then we really saw a peak this year. It was about the end of May. We actually hit a day that was over 34 million gallons a day. That day was our largest day to date. And we've seen that kind of increasing throughout the years as we're bringing on more customers, is that every year our largest day is growing by a little bit. So we've done some things to help counteract that. Our Perrysburg plant, which I talked about earlier, is done and designed for an upgrade. We're working through some permitting right now, and that will take it from 15 million gallons a day up to 30 million gallons a day. So we'll have a daily capacity of about 54 million gallons, which through our master planning takes us pretty far out into the future. So outdoor usage, you saw back on that graph how summertime really affects the system. So what does that look like? So we can look at each meter individually in our system. I went to an area where I knew irrigation was pretty prevalent. I picked a random meter, and I pulled their month to date this year. So they have kind of that similar curve to what you saw in our whole system, that in the winter months it's not as much, March and April increases, and really peaks in June. So for this customer here, these months would kind of represent what their average indoor use is. The difference there is their outdoor use. That's why I say you can conserve water in your home, but if you're able to conserve water outside your home, you'll really make an impact. Because 10% of this isn't nearly as much as 10% of that. So if we take a look even farther and look at their May month, you can clearly see that this is irrigation. There's a pattern to it. They water 2 days, they take a day off. They water a day, they take 3 days off. We can go look at anybody's account. We know what days you're irrigating, how long you're irrigating, when you're irrigating. We don't do that, but this is the ability our system has, and I'll get to later how you can access this yourself. And again, for this particular customer, we can see the irrigation comes on at 6. I guess it probably goes off at about 7:15. So this is what you typically see in a customer who's irrigating. You can see the rest of the day their indoor water usage is fairly minimal. So how much should you be watering your lawn? We've partnered with the Clemson Extension to come up with some guidelines on how to water the lawn. I'm just going to go wiggle this so it'll shut off. And I'm not an expert on irrigation or lawn care maintenance or keeping plants alive. But on our website, we do have a section dedicated to irrigation, and it'll take you to this website here, provided by Clemson. And they have some really good information there. I posted about a ½ an inch to 1 inch of water. That site goes into detail about what kind of soil do you have, what's your grass like, the amount of shade, all sorts of great things that can help you decide how much water to use on your yard. If you're in control of your irrigation schedule, it's something you can do yourself. One easy trick we tell people all the time is take a can of cat food or tuna and put it out in your yard. And when you come out after an irrigation cycle, if it's overflowed, you're probably overwatering your yard because they're usually about 1 inch deep. But again, I would really recommend anybody interested in cutting down on their irrigation or just trying to optimize their water usage outdoors to take a look at this website. It has tons of information, links, and contacts that can help you out. And so one thing we've done is this program here. We're asking folks not to water on Mondays. So Monday is our biggest peak day of the week. That's when everybody's going back to work. In the morning, that's when we see the biggest draw in our system. So from there, we've asked folks in even-numbered houses to water on Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, and folks in odd-numbered houses to water the lawns on Tuesday, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And for everybody, avoid irrigating between 3 and 9 a.m. We weren't able to get it due to technical difficulty, but out of our plants, we can see our daily pattern of usage. And in the morning, it really spikes up, and then it comes back down. So If you can water outside of what is a normal peak for folks when they're waking up, taking showers, getting ready for the day, we have the water available, it just stresses our system much less. And so I brought a bunch of magnets here that say the same thing. Feel free to take them, put them inside your house, but even better, if there's something metal near your irrigation controller, stick it there. And if you have someone that takes care of that for you, hopefully they'll see it and make some changes. We've also done a pretty good amount of outreach with the local landscaping companies too to try to share this information. But again, if you're able to help with that, that'd be
Brian, is that figure on the first line there, that's the number of inches or part of inches in a week, right? A half to 1 inch of water a week?
I think so. Or it might be per watering. I'd have to go look at that website. That's a good question.
That's way too much for one time, that's a week.
Okay, so that's a week's worth.
That's a week's worth.
Like I said, I'm not an expert in irrigation, but there's one over there. So, talk a little bit about our water meters. Does everybody know where their water meter is in the yard? Have you guys seen it? Okay, good. So this is what a typical water meter will look like right now, the new ones. The one you may have a different lid. It may not say Beaufort Jasper on the lid. It may be rusted. It could be plastic. And you may or may not have the shutoff valve directly after your meter. This is a standard we switched to sometime in the 90s, and that is, we call it the customer valve. So we ask that customers not go into the meter, and that is the customer shutoff valve there to be used in the event you need to turn your water off in emergency, or if you're leaving town and would like it off, which we'll talk about later. A couple things about our water meters. If you're able to, please keep any vegetation about 3 feet away from home. It helps us find it as well as it'll help you find it if you need it in the event of an emergency. Plus now, with the new technology we have cellular transponders in the meters. And if there's thick vegetation over, like if a bush has grown up over the years or something, it can kind of stop that signal from coming out, and we're not able to get the water reading as frequently. And also, don't drive on your meter. Some of them can be located near the driveway. They're not traffic rated, and a couple things can happen. The lid can just break on it. Sometimes it can push the meter into the ground and actually break your service line. So if you're aware where those are, that's great. Please keep them clear and try not to damage them. If you weren't aware of where they are, this is typically where they are installed. Again, this is our current location. What we try to do is we pick a property line, and this property line is typically designated for wet utilities. So we were talking earlier about the transformers, and you may see those cable boxes on one side of your property. If you go to the other corner, you'll find the wet utilities. That's us. And our typical configuration is the 2 water meters inside of the 2 sewer cleanouts for each property. This makes easy access for us in the event we need to come out to it. And like I said, it separates us from the power company. Water and power don't mix. So we maintain a pretty robust map of all these. We typically know where they are. For Dawtaw, it can be a little bit different. I pulled this one here. This was Reeve Road. And as you can see, we've got multiple meters going to houses, which is from the irrigation meter. So a lot of homeowners out here, you may have 2 meters. One is your irrigation meter, one is your potable meter, which we'll get into the difference in a little bit. But if you ever have to find it, one thing I did notice is they will be located at least along your front property line. It does appear most of them were put in kind of before that property line standard was set. So you may find them next to your driveway or more generally in the center of the lots. However, it can vary. These here appear to be on the property line. These are kind of near the driveway. So I would just say, if you don't know where it is, you can always give us a call. We'll come out and help you find it before you need it in an emergency as well. Yes?
Hey Brian, we went through after the hurricane a few years ago and a couple of ice storms, we went through and we have a map and a logbook of all of our residents' water meters, where they're located, and then we have reference points off of the driveway and off of the right of way.
Awesome.
Where you can triangulate and find your meter.
That's
So if you ever need information, or you ever need the information, we have.
Yep. So one of the things we did when we upgraded these meters is that as the company came through, you may have seen them doing the work, they put a cellular transponder in there, but we also have a GPS locate them with
That's even better.
the current accuracy level. We've done it some years ago, which will get you to like 3 feet of the meter. Now they tell me it's under a centimeter.
That's great. A lot of them are covered up, as you know.
Yes.
Very hard to find.
They can be, especially
Especially when you're in a hurry.
Yep, grass and all sorts of things. But that's generally, if you need to find it, some tips to look for. So like I said, a lot of homes out here do have an irrigation meter. Those were started originally to avoid paying any sewer on that water usage, because obviously if it's on the lawn, we're not receiving it back at our treatment plant. So this is right from our website. You can see the fees there. It is a little bit more expensive per volumetric usage. However, like I said, you avoid paying the $6.49 per 1,000 gallons. If you don't have one of these meters, I would encourage you to do the math to see if it's really worth the $600 installation fee, because our sewer bill maxes out at 7,000 gallons. So the most we'll charge you for sewer is $59 a month. So the $600 installation fee, sometimes you have to just determine how much are you really using, is it gonna pay off, how long will it take? So if you don't have one of these meters, I wouldn't worry about it too much. If you think you want one, I would sit down and just go through that, and you can call up our front office, they can come out and install one for you. So, does anybody here have our Ion Water app? Okay, a few folks. This is really great. This is what we've been putting our cellular transponders in for. Beaufort Jasper's spent $2 million on upgrading all of our meters to make this possible. And it provides, one, a great benefit as a customer, because if you're not home and you're worried you left your water on, you can check it. It does leak detection, and it can help you view your usage just easily, not month by month, but even day by day, to help you find any patterns in your usage. As a utility, it's great because it's provided us hourly usage data, so we're better able to understand how our customers are using water, not only at times of the day, but if different communities are using more water than other communities. It helps us in our capital planning to make sure we're planning our projects where they need to be. If you're not already registered, I would encourage you to go to that website. You can sign up there. It's on our website. When you get there, kind of get one of these screens, just click create an account. The only thing I would say do ahead of time is get your current bill, because it will ask you for your account number. That's how it links it back to us. From there, it'll go through the standard setup, email, and username, and all that stuff, how you want to access it. But once you're in it, this is what it'll look like. So this is actually mine for the month of October. And like I mentioned, it's great because you can see, what's going on. So my family and I took vacation. We were out of town, right here. No water usage at the house. That's perfect. You don't want to see anything there if you're not home, because either someone's using your water or you have a leak. But this is a really good tool. I know in the summertime I can see when my kids are outside with a sprinkler and things like that. But it's a good way to just track what you got going on and if there's anything unusual in your house. Like I said, for leak detection, it can be used for that too. So when you log in, this is through the website, you might see a warning that says leak detected. So this is actually an account. It's out here at Dalta. I've protected the identity of the individual. And this is what their November usage looked like. It doesn't look that unusual. I don't think anybody would say for sure one way or the other whether this customer had a leak. However, if we click on one of the days, it looks like this. So as you can see throughout the night, midnight to 6 a.m., there's just a little bit of usage. They got up at 7, did some things throughout the day, but this right here, this is what it looks for. This is a leak in your house. So this tool, if you don't already have it, I would really encourage you to download it. Yes?
Does the system show different results for the potable water and the irrigation?
Yes, if you have 2 meters, you will have, when you log in, you'll see 2 accounts. So you can pick which one you want to view. So if you're trying to dial in your irrigation usage and you're curious how much your sprinkler system used that morning, you can go look at that one. If you just want to keep an eye on it for leak detection, you can click your potable meter. And I also think this will, you can go in there and set up warnings and things like that. Email me if you detect a leak and all that. So this is a great tool that's available to everybody. And hopefully you don't have a leak, but this is one way you can make sure you don't. Yes?
Do you offer any leak detection service? Or, it's one thing to, okay, you have a leak,
Yes.
but sometimes it's very difficult to find out where the leak is. If it's out, especially if it's in a sprinkler system, you have an irrigation valve that's slightly open, and over the years, of course, you get buried.
Yes.
Do you offer any kind of help for people?
We do not, as the authority. I was going to talk a little bit about our Home Serve program at the end, because I think there may have been some questions. That may be a scope of service they may offer. But something like that would typically just be an irrigation contractor or a plumber.
Most of your common leaks like that are toilets. You use a homeowner to put food coloring in the back of your toilet at night. Most of those leaks will come up that way or flat roofs.
All right, so to, I guess, talk about hurricanes some more. We heard a good bit about what to do for a hurricane, so I won't go into too much general detail, but I'll tell you, Beaufort Jasper, what we do. We have generators at all our major facilities, so our 2 water treatment plants, our booster pump stations from there to here, all have generators. We also have a lot of what we call rolling generators, trailer mounted generators, that we bring out in the event of a hurricane. If lift stations are down and it's isolated to just one, we bring power to it. So Beaufort Jasper is, I won't say hurricane proof, but we are resilient as much as we can be. We also build in redundancies to our systems. So they talked a little bit about earlier, Dawtaw, you guys come down a causeway. So obviously there's one feed to this island for water, for power. That causeway is very important. You may have seen some messaging from us probably about 2 years ago, where we had put out that there were some causeways in Beaufort County. We were going to be closing the water before the storm came. Dawtaw is not one of those communities. We've looked at this causeway. It's well maintained. It has some engineered systems that help protect it from a hurricane. If you see any messaging like that, just know it's not the Dawtaw causeway. What we look at is some of these smaller communities that have longer causeways that are just built of dirt. And what we noticed during Hurricane Matthew is when that washes away, our water line goes with it. The result is that all the water in our system leaves our system through that particular leak. So what we've done is made the decision to close some of those off before a hurricane. It does leave the folks behind it, potentially without water. What we've actually done is we've installed 2-inch bypasses around, so they'll have some water, but it won't be of their normal pressure. But it does protect the rest of our system in the event that those causeways are washed away. Yes?
So if, let's say, someone decides to stay behind in a hurricane situation on Dawtaw, are you saying that we still will have water and sewer available to us even during the...
To the extent possible, yes. So we are very dependent upon the power company, especially for sewer service. On the water side, like I said, we do have generators along the way. So typically for us, there has to be some major washout of a causeway between here and the water supply.
So if I may ask, if the electric company shuts down the grid in our area, you say you would provide a generator to keep the water and sewer?
Yes, the water generators are already in place in our facilities. They automatically transfer in the event of lost power. And that's primarily because we're required to maintain a certain amount of system pressure before we have to issue a boil water notice. We don't want that to happen, so we have those in place because the power can really go out during any storm, not just a hurricane. So on the water side, very unlikely that you would lose water service during a hurricane. On the sewer side, however, we have 500 plus sewer lift stations in our system. It is unfortunately just not feasible to have a permanent generator at every single one of them. So typically what will happen in a hurricane is the sewer will probably leave your house, right? It'll flush the toilet, it'll go down, you'll run the sink, you won't see it. If our power is completely off, what will happen is the sewer will come out at the lowest point. So in most cases, the sewer systems are designed so that our lift station is the lowest point. However, there have been instances where someone's house is lower for whatever reason. They have a low lot, it was on a slab, and it can back up into someone's house. So, you know, if there's no power, you know, you may see messages from us asking folks to reduce that sewer usage. Because you might not realize it. It's leaving your house, you think all is good, but it could be running down the street somewhere. But in those events, what we do is we quickly gather how many lift stations are out, deploy our generators as quickly as possible, and try to make sure that we're keeping it in the pipes in our system and delivering it to a treatment plant.
And I'll just share, we would not proactively turn off power to the island. There was a comment about what if the power company shuts off it. That doesn't happen. We don't proactively turn off power. The power may go out for all the reasons we discussed, But in terms of water and sewer, that is on our, that's what's considered our key and critical customer list. So Beaufort Jasper Water and Sewer and all of the infrastructure that's needed from sewer plants and treatment plants to hospitals, first responders, those are going to be the customers we restore first anyway, should there be an outage. But we wouldn't proactively turn off the power in the event of a storm.
Okay, thank you.
We do work very closely after hurricanes.
Yes, we do.
Lots of phone calls. But here's just a general reminder. This was actually in our most recent news flash. If anybody reads our newsletter, this was kind of on the last page. But just some things to do before you evacuate. Turn off your water shutoff. So that's that green box if you have one. That's the best place. The next one is there's usually one just outside your house, either near the crawl space or foundation. If you can use this one, it's best. Just in the event a tree falls in your yard and it uproots your line, it doesn't result in a leak. In the event of an emergency and you absolutely can't find anything, there is a shutoff inside your meter. We really ask that if you're not comfortable closing that one, to just give us a call and we'll close it. But you know, if it's the middle of the night and there's water spraying in your kitchen or something, you have to use it. It's okay. Also, make sure you turn off your water heater if you're going to turn off your water, and secure any faucets. If you're going to stay behind, you may want to consider filling up some containers with fresh drinking water, stored in a safe place. Fill your bathtubs for non-potable use. That water can be used to flush a toilet. It can be used for cleaning. Your bathtub can hold quite a bit of water. And also keep an eye on our mobile website and social media. That's where we'll post any updates as far as we have, or outages in our system may be, if there's any boil water notices and any updates from us. If you haven't done so already, call our customer service folks, give them your mobile telephone number. We're now entering the texting of updates and things like that, but we need people's mobile numbers. We're finding we have a lot of house numbers and a lot of texts don't get received there. So again, when you come back, take a look, make sure we don't have any boil water notices in your area. If you have debris, try not to place it on your meter box or near your hydrants. During MACA, I think we learned this, that those companies that come out with claws and things like that, they don't care what's under the pile of sticks. They'll just grab it and go. So we had a few meters get ripped up. So if you know where your meter is and you have to pile up debris, try to give it a buffer. That way they don't do any more damage to it. And just like Dominion, we have crews that stay behind. We're actually scattered between 4 of our locations. There's probably about 50 or 60 of us that stay throughout the storm, and that's primarily so that as soon as the storm is over and Beaufort County lets us know that it's safe to come out, we come out, we do damage assessment. That's where we find which stations are damaged from tree falling, don't have power. We quickly prioritize them and then mobilize those generators and contractors we have to clear debris and restore service. So lastly, I understand there was a few questions about HomeServe. Again, our most recent news splash letter, our GM wrote a fairly good cover piece about HomeServe. So this is a plan you can purchase. Beaufort Jasper partnered with them back in 2015. They offer essentially insurance on water or sewer lines from your property line, so roughly where the meter is, to the slab of your house or your crawl space. Typically, your homeowner's insurance only covers what may be underneath the footprint of your house. This is just an additional plan. It's not required. You can purchase this through your normal homeowner's insurance as well through a rider. It doesn't have to be HomeServe. We partnered with this because they offered us about 12% on the commissions, and Beaufort Jasper uses that money to fund our hardship fund. We partner with United Way, and they actually manage it for us as folks are not able to pay their bills for various reasons. United Way screens them, makes sure it's legitimate, and they use that money to help them out. Typo there, but over the past 2 years, it's been about $170,000 that's been able to help folks pay their water or sewer bill. So just, if anybody has any further questions about it, I'll be happy to answer them, but I know there's questions about why do I get these letters, what is this program, what is Beaufort Jasper doing with it? That's kind of the short answer for it. So with that, are there any questions on what I talked about, or Rob Kevin along, because he's the expert in water treatment and water quality, and I know a lot of times folks have questions about that too, so. Thank you. Yes,
Sorry. Me?
yes, sir.
Okay. With regards to leak detection, I don't need to tell my personal story, but we detected a leak in our landscape system, and sometimes those are difficult to find. And ultimately, it was cheaper to put a master valve in. Could you just mention what that is, or do you want me to do?
A master valve?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not a irrigation contractor, unfortunately.
Okay, well, I learned from personal experience, I was spending more money trying to find where the leak was than making an investment. It's an extra valve, which is right where the water supply is coming into the irrigation. And what happens is, it's off unless the landscaping is on or you force it to come on. Otherwise, the water doesn't get past the master valve. So if there's a slow leak because of a leak that damaged a pipe that you can't find or something like that,
Yeah, it's great.
the water's not getting to the irrigation system.
Yes.
Is there a future discussion for new technologies using our salty water desalination or any of that for Beaufort Jasper?
Desal is extremely expensive and also very much of a power hog. Most desal plants are be located next to a nuclear power plant commonly. So in that aspect, it's not something that we would really look at. We have numerous freshwater sources. With the Savannah River, we have a 99 million gallon a day permit as right now. We're nowhere close to that.
But isn't there a big fight though, that's where I was going to with Savannah River, there's still a big fight about the diversion of or the divvying up of those water between Savannah and Charleston, not Charleston, but in this area, so I'm just kind of curious, is there any forward thinking on that, that sooner or later it's got to be?
We have, right now, we've already, there's really no battle over on our side of it for that. Savannah had a problem with people in the port where they had to actually build a massive reservoir on their end. But with the amount of water that comes down through the Savannah River, we don't pull even a fraction of a drop out of it compared to what's coming down.
There was recently a lot of discussion about discharging into the Savannah River and balancing the pounds of waste. And Beaufort Jasper did participate in that. And similar to our withdrawal permit, we were able to secure a discharge permit. But to your point, if we ever come near that permit, it would be difficult to get more discharge capacity in the river.
And education-wise, when you just talked about putting things down, the water, sewer, lateral sink, that might be something you could touch on, like when people put down grease and everything that goes into the system and...
Yeah, that's another program. We do offer that a lot at workshops like this and community events is fog, fats, oils, and grease. And we have a couple YouTube videos on what to flush. So if you're interested, check it out. But you're right, definitely don't put any grease down the system.
Medications.
The wipes that are labeled flushable, very few of them actually are flushable. So they might make it out of your pipes, but we see them in ours, and they do bunch up and create clogs. Yes, sir.
What are you discharging into the Savannah River? Kind of
Sure.
confused about that.
So we have 8 wastewater treatment plants as well. One is located in Hardyville, and it discharges the treated wastewater into the Savannah River. The water is much cleaner actually than what's in the river itself. So for reference, Dawtaw is served by the St. Helena wastewater treatment plant, which is located off Old Water Road. And it discharges back here onto the golf course, primarily. We also have a sod farm for well weather. Yes?
I want to give my green pitch and conservation pitch. One of my biggest pet peeves, and this is, as a community, we got to do better. But I come at 5 a.m. every morning, and it's raining like cats and dogs, and I'm going down Dawtaw Drive just watching everybody's sprinkler goes. The biggest thing you can do to help them, and the biggest thing you can do to be green and conserve is control your irrigation. You're wasting water, you're wasting money. You see the system stressed already. Control your irrigation. Just turn it off right now for the winter. You can turn it off. If you see that it's gone 3 weeks and hasn't rained, go hit the water all stations button on your controller. But control your irrigation. That's the biggest thing you can do to help them, the environment, and the whole system. But people don't control their water.
Very true.
further to that, Brian, I was on the Clemson site this morning, looking at landscape, and maybe you could provide some more, I find some of the information there's a bit scientific, and maybe people in the trade and stuff, like what times of the year should you be irrigating, when should you be shutting it down? You know, what approximately provides 1 inch of water a week, you know? How many times a week, how many minutes or something? Maybe something a little simpler than the information on the Clemson site. Are those rain gauges worthwhile, or should you put some kind of a moisture detector in this, you know, around your site or something like that? So you might want to think about providing some information about irrigation to residents.
We can do that.
That'd be great.
I like it too, this can.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
You can install what's called a hydrometer, which actually measures the amount of moisture in your soil, and it'll actually prevent your irrigation system from coming on. I don't know how sophisticated any of the sprinkler contractors are, but it takes care of that problem, and that's what it was designed to do. And they are available, so everyone may want to check that out.
Thank you all.
I want to thank everybody for coming. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. We appreciate the value that these folks have added to our community. Spread the word about the irrigation, Brian. I think that's a good one. I've had a lot of new people on our island. My neighbor, one who moved here from California, they don't know how they're supposed to sprinkle. They're sprinkling every day. They're doing all these odd things. So it's good to communicate that to people. So we appreciate this. Is something that has never been done, as far as I'm concerned, I think, on the island, to have these kind of folks come and talk to us. So you've seen a one-of-a-kind thing, and I appreciate it. Have a great Thanksgiving. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please.